Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First things first, can you hear me? I want to say thank you so much for joining me and welcome to Coffee Chat brought to you by the SA Property Investors Network. I am your host, Kali Masubani. I want to say thank you so much for joining us on this coffee chat. So today we're going to be discussing something that I feel a lot of people should know, but coincidentally they don't know, which is the different uses for your property. And I have a very special guest who's going to be helping us unpack the different ways you can use your property. The standard way, obviously, is that you rent it out to somebody and you get an income from that, but there's a multitude of ways that you can actually use your property. And like I said, I have a very special guest who's going to be helping us unpack that. As always, if this is your first time joining us, please let me know in the chat box. I always love actually getting to know you guys and interacting because this is an interactive show in terms of where you guys are from and where you're watching me. And if this is your first time and you are a bit shy, please just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if this is your first time. Alternatively, just let me know where you are viewing us from. You can actually watch us from all over the world because we are streaming through Facebook and YouTube. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and invite all the other patrons to actually join us in order for us to expand people's knowledge of property investment. So before I get to our special guest, because I want him to have, okay, I've already given up that it's a he, but I want him to have a moment for himself. I want to just give us a quick rundown of the events that we're currently going to be having. And as I said last week, September is a jam-packed month. We're halfway through, but we still have an amazing array of events that are currently happening. As always, we are going to be having a event in Edenvale at our head offices. And this event is going to be talking about strategies, which is similar to what we're going to be discussing today. Then we are having an event on Thursday, the 28th in Peter Maritzburg. Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a networking event in Peter Maritzburg. The link for this will be in the chat box from our website. We're also having an online mastermind. So if you aren't in PNB, but you also still want to be a part of it, we're going to be having a mastermind, completely different, and that's going to be on the 28th of September. Ladies, the women's breakfast that's happening on the 23rd of September, this coming Saturday. It's going to be phenomenal. As always, if you were at the annual Women's Day event, you would have known how amazing and supportive these events are. So a women's Saturday women's breakfast is going to be happening on the 23rd. Now, we're going to be having an event on the 21st of September on Thursday, and we're going to be featuring this gentleman. And this is our special guest. This is the gentleman who started all of this, and this is our CEO, Andrew Walker. So, ladies and gentlemen, can I please get a giant hand clap, thumbs up, all the things in the chat box for our guest, Andrew Walker.
Hello, Kali Maswani.
How are you,
I'm
sir?
very good, and you?
I'm good, thank you so much.
Just got back from Cape Town.
Yes, we had an
Cape Town was
amazing
awesome.
workshop. How was that?
Not awesome, about 17 investors
Mhm.
talking about buy-to let flipping strategies. Completely overwhelmed them,
Yeah,
but they were very happy at the end.
that's great because when you're overwhelmed, it means you finally realize that you need a support and you need the network such as the
Yeah.
SA Properties Investors
And
Network.
it's so funny because they all come into the workshop going, they know everything about property,
Yes.
and they left going, I know nothing about property.
So, today we're going to be talking about the different uses for your property. Like we said, as you mentioned, people stereotypically think they know and they understand
Yes.
how to use a property. I buy, a house and I put a family in there, and yay, I have a property investment, and that's
And they end up with
it.
a negative cash flow property, most of them.
Yes. So let's get started. And please, ladies and gentlemen, put all of your questions in the live chat box for our CEO Andrew Walker with everything pertaining to your questions of the different uses for your property. We'll make sure that Andrew, and these are the very, very few times we'll actually get to ask Andrew questions, unless you're part of the workshop. But put them in the chat box, and we're going to make sure that Andrew answers them. I have a question straight out the gate.
Yes.
Okay, and that is, we often hear you have equity in your property.
Yes.
And this is something people don't particularly understand what it is.
Sure.
So, what is equity, and how do you release this equity that you have?
Sure. 100%. So equity is if you look at a property, let's say, for example, the property valuation is R1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if the valuation is R1 million and the current mortgage stroke bond on the property is 500,000 rand,
Mm-hmm.
that means your equity is 500. The value is R1 million, the debt's 500. The difference is your equity. Now, on the workshop, I always say to people, who's got equity in the room? And most people do have equity in the room. And I ask them, what is equity doing for you? What is equity actually doing? Yes, it's a bit of a safety having some equity in a property.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, how hard is the equity working for you? As in, could we release equity? Could we use equity to invest into further opportunities? And the answer is absolutely yes. Look, you could sell the asset to release equity, but then you're getting rid of a property, which isn't great. You'll be paying capital gains on the property, which isn't great.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't advise selling it to release unless you absolutely had to. But there's other ways of refinancing a property. Some people have further advances on a current bond where it's worth R1 million. They've got an access facility where they can draw that money out and they can use that to renovate the property. They can use that to go purchase another property. And the great thing is you don't get taxed on a loan. So they can take the money out. They can use it to buy and sell properties. They can use it for a deposit or bond and transfer fees, whatever the case says. But the key question is, how do you release, or how can you take that equity and make it work harder for you? But Kelly, if you are going to what we call refinance a property,
Yes.
you've got to make sure that your credit score is good. You've got to make sure that the banks will see value in the valuation,
Yes.
and they will do a check on you. And if you don't have the bond affordability, you probably won't be able to refinance that property.
Okay, so essentially you're saying in terms of people who often, say, well, I don't have the money, or I can't start my journey because I don't have the money. Here's a great place. If you've been paying off your house for the last 10 years, you now finally have equity, so you can release that equity and essentially purchase another property from one standard property. And that's one of the ways, in terms of different ways you can use your property.
So providing you're still full-time employed and you've got the bond affordability, the credit score, because we do come across situations where there's an individual, they've got a house, it's paid off, it's worth $1 million, there's no debt, so they've got $1 million equity, they've got no bond on the property, but they're unemployed. So banks obviously won't then lend them or won't let them release the equity. So this is where we start to get creative and we start to think about how can we release it. So yes, I spoke about selling the asset. That's the easy way. But there's going to be capital gains and all that. Could you perhaps approach a private investor, people with cash, where you borrow, it's called angel financing, where they lend you the money and you then secure a bond against the property for that individual. And you then pay them a monthly amount as though they are the bank, but it's just private money.
Okay, so as we keep the questions going, guys, please put your questions in the chat box. We are talking about different uses for your property, essentially strategies, but it's because most people don't understand the many ways that they can be a property investor. And a different one is, like I said, the standard is you purchase a property or you have a cottage in the back and you put a family in there.
Yeah.
But then there's other ways where the same property, as soon as you switch your strategy, you switch the use, you can actually have a higher rental income and have a higher cash flow.
Yes.
So what would be that way where you're using the exact same property, but you're just using a different model?
Yeah, so there's some very basic strategies out there. For example, I met a guy in Cape Town, and what he did was he took a one-bedroom flat where he was renting it to an individual, and he converted it to a two-bedroom flat. So where I think he was getting like 4,500 rand, now he's getting 3,000 plus 3,000, so he's getting 6,000 rand. So his bond payment's the same, his rates and taxes are the same, but he's getting a higher rental. Some individuals who own freehold properties where perhaps it's a three-bedroom house, 2 bathrooms, lounge and dining room, where they may be getting 12,000 rand as a family home, you could convert that straight to a buy-to-let to a commune or multi-let, where it'll either be shared kitchen, shared bathroom, where now you're renting the rooms out individually, or perhaps you go as far as creating self-contained flats. So kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. But just be careful because that starts to lead into, do we need to start rezoning? Are we talking of 10 units, 4 units? And also, Kelly, what you're going to think about is if I took a family house and I was renting it as a buy-to-let and I want to now change the strategy to that of a multi-let, and some people do go as far as taking a residential house and they literally create flats within the property. You're always going to think about what's your exit. What if you want to sell the property one day and the banks have to come value it? Would you actually get a home loan on it? So it's a very grey area. And that is why I'd say consult with us before you do anything like that.
Yes. And that actually was a good segue right into, like you said, people will just subdivide, whatever. Can I do multi-lets without rezoning? Because that's also something people aren't quite aware of, to go,
Sure.
once you hit a certain mark or threshold,
Yes.
you actually might get into trouble and you need to actually rezone.
Sure, 100%. Now, the answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. Let's use the word multi-let. Let's say I take a family house and I go rent out 3 bedrooms in that property. So I've gone from 1 tenant to 3 tenants. Am I going to go rezone it? No, I'm not.
Yes.
If, however, I'm going to take a property and say there's 2 cottages on that property, so there's a family house, and there's 2 cottages, depending on which municipality I'm dealing with, that still might be fine. But if I go and I chop that property into units, if I go build an additional 2 units, the density, I'm now getting 10, 15 people on that piece of property. The answer is yes, I'm going to have to rezone it. In some cases, people will take a residential property as Res 1, and they go build like 4 or 5 flats at the back. As soon as we start doing that type of activity, we're going to have to rezone. So I think the conversation is, if I've got a family house and all I do is I do what's called a commune, I can get consent from the municipality to get permission to rent my property out for up to 10 people in a house without having to rezone. But as soon as I go higher than that and I start building more flats on the property, now I might need to go from Res 1 to Res 2 or Res 3. And that is where you've got to speak to one of our partners called Saskia Cole, because what you'll find is, Ekurhuleni versus other municipalities across the country, they all have similar guidelines, but it's not the same across the country.
Yes. So there's different specs per municipality, and having somebody like a Saskia Cole, who is a town planner, will be great. So we're going to the chat box, and the questions are already flowing in. So please, guys, put your questions in. Samkelo is saying, I am interested in finding out what the best / most lucrative property investing strategy might be. Which one would you say it is, and how do you find what's best for you?
So it's a good question. I'll tell you why. So on the workshop, we had Robin Booth coming in, and Robin Booth said Airbnb is the best investment strategy to use. If you want cash flow, you go to Airbnb. Then if you go meet Mohammed Gadi, Mohammed Gadi is going to tell you student accommodation is the best strategy. If you go to Mark Berman is going to tell you, development is the best strategy. If you come to myself, I'm going to tell you multi-let is the best strategy. So it's a good question, because I think it depends on the individual themselves. Because not everyone's got the risk appetite to do student accommodation.
Yes.
Not everyone's got the appetite to go take a property and chop it into 10 units and deal with lower income tenants. So it comes down to you. What are your goals? How much capital do you have? What's your risk appetite? And why are you investing in property? Are you looking to buy just a few properties, safe investments for long-term for pension plan, or are you looking to replace your current income using property as the vehicle? Down the road of rent to rent and Airbnb, there's good cash flow to be made. So I don't think there's one specific strategy that is better than any other strategy. It starts with you. Because I met some guys on the weekend who said, look, I love the idea of Airbnb, I love the idea of multi-lets and development, but Andrew, I just want to invest in some good buy-to-lets. I don't want to take high risk. Or I don't have the appetite for that type of strategy. Versus meeting someone like Jean-Paul, one of our students, who's buying farms, mines, and he's buying trucks, and he's doing a whole bunch of stuff, which is awesome. But he's willing to take the risk. So I think it's a case of people need to do what's called the property investor needs analysis report that you, Daniel, and myself do. And we need to identify what quadrant, are you quadrant A, B, C, or D? We need to identify what your goals are, and we can help the students identify what strategy will work best for them.
Okay, so speaking about helping the students, and that's the entire premise of the SA Properties Investors Network. We're a community of like-minded individuals who teach and grow and learn. We're having an event, a free one at that, on Thursday.
Yes.
Do you want to just give us an understanding of what exactly this event is for?
Sure. So this Thursday evening, it's a live 2-hour free session here at our head office at the Buzz, where I'm going to share with you how we took this old guest house. I'm going to show you some before and after photos. I'm going to share with the audience how I negotiated the deal, how I dropped the purchase price by R1 million, and how we're going to be making profit from a multi-use building. Because it's not as easy as people think. They just rock up here to the Buzz and go, oh, there's a conference room, oh, there's a flat, oh, there's a boardroom, oh, there's a head office. But I'm going to show them how we did it,
Yes.
as well as identifying how to run the numbers.
Mhm.
And we just spoke about student accommodation, buy-to-let development, multi-let student accommodation. So also on Thursday night, myself and Daniel and the team are going to share with the students how that works, what's entailed, what are the pros and cons, and help guide them along what could suit their strategy.
Yes. Okay. So we're essentially going to be talking the different uses of property and the different strategies, right? And literally something of from beginning to end, which is the perfect example was the bus, from learning the
Yes.
numbers and coming in R1 million less to running 8, self-contained Airbnb flats
Yeah,
to a conference center and all of that. So we're going to be able to be learning all of that on Thursday.
definitely. And the thing is, with all the strategies, Kelly, as you know, there's pros and cons.
Yes.
So whether it's buy-to-let or you're flipping a property, and a lot of people these days really want to learn, Kelly, how the ISA works, installment sale agreements. Because if you think about it, interest rates went down to 7% in COVID, and there were a lot of people buying properties. There were record months with estate agents. And I remember at the time, some of the estate agents told me that these people that bought properties at 7% could just afford it. Interest rates have gone up, and I can tell you now they can't afford it.
Yes.
And the problem is because they've been newly built, there's no equity, or newly bought, there's going to be no equity.
Yes.
In fact, there might be negative equity. But if the property lends itself to a cash flow strategy, we as investors need to learn and can apply the installment sale agreement method. And if you can apply that, you can do as many deals as you want. Now, I'd love to go into detail on that, but that's something which I'd have to explain live on Thursday night.
Okay, so the link is in the chat box for you guys to register for this free event. I personally am going to be there because I'm like, wow, these are things
It's going to be
want.
awesome.
It's going to be awesome. And guys, like I said, please put your questions in the chat box in terms of the different ways you can use your property, so your different strategies. We have another question from Sam, and he's saying, speaking of running the numbers, what would you say is a good return on investment? And this is actually a really important question because for the most part, people don't understand what an actual good return on investment is, and what's it going for and what it isn't.
Absolutely. So return on investment, what is a good return? So I always compare it to, and you've always got to compare it to something else, right?
Yes.
It's a good return in relation to what? So the first of all thing I love about property, when you think about it, it's got two returns which combines one big return. It's got your rental return,
Yes.
and it's got capital growth if you get capital growth, and combined it gives you one nice return. Now, if we look at the banks, Kelly, and I asked when I was in Cape Town this last weekend, we said to the audience, ladies and gents, what type of return are we getting in the banks, in the savings account? And some people are getting 8%, 9%. So if I were to go buy a property and a return on that was 7%, but I could put my money into the bank and get 9%, while I put my money in the bank, not a property.
Yes.
Now, also, when we do property, there's risk. So if I'm getting 12% from a property, so 12% ROI, and I'm getting 9% from a bank, yes, it's 3% above it. However, I'm taking big risks buying property. What if the tenant doesn't pay? What if the tenant trashes the property? So I want to make sure I get a decent return. And for me, buying a multi-let property, and the higher the risk of a property, the higher return I want to see on that paper. So for a lot of investors, they're looking for returns of around 20% and above.
Yes.
Now, look, when you do your basic buy-to-let, it's very difficult to get those type of returns, but it's a safe environment. It's less risk. It's easier to manage. But especially if you're doing multi-let, you're doing communes, you want to be going for a higher return. I've got some investors on our books that they're happy with 15%, 15, 17. I've got some investors who want 30 plus. So
that's a nice return.
Exactly. Is there one size that fits all? No. You kind of attach the return to the risk of the strategy.
Yes.
Because if I'm buying, if there's an awesome property in a bad area, and I'm like, okay, if I buy this property, there's risk of it getting broken into, whatever. But if it's managed correctly, I'll make good cash flow because it's in a poor or it's in a low income area. I want to make sure I get a high return.
Yes.
But if I'm buying a property, say in a very affluent area, I'm buying for capital growth, what you'll find is your rental return won't be great. The yield will be low. However, you could have a capital growth strategy. Yes. So your return's going to come in the end.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's safe to say, I would say then anything above 15% pertaining to the
Yeah.
risk.
That's
So,
what most people go for.
yes, okay. So, and then if you are over here with the 30%, come talk to me. That that would be a great risk. So, okay, fantastic. So, if any of you have any questions, please let me know in the chat box as we are rounding off. However, I want to let you guys know again about the events that are happening in and around the country because this is what we do. Firstly, you are going to be in Peter Maritzburg on the
Yes.
28th of September for an actual networking event.
Correct. So Peter Maritzburg next week Thursday at South Africa, and then I'm busy arranging a breakfast with apps on the Friday morning. So if you are around Peter Maritzburg, the Midlands area, we're going to be talking about auctions, buying properties at auctions, flipping properties at auctions, the difference between public events and public auctions and sheriff auctions.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people with money at PMB actually. Yeah? So it's a great place to network. It's a great place to network, to meet like-minded property investors. Some awesome deals happening out there. There's a hotel for sale that we'll be going through. And then Friday morning, I'm going to drive to Durban, meet up with Bevan, Kendall, the Durban team. So if you're in or around Durban or know of anyone, but the breakfast, I'm limiting to like 10 people. It's going to
Okay.
be a small, intimate, it's going to be conversational,
Mhm.
and it's around the Durban market, what's
Okay.
working where. We know kind of there's quite a few Joburg members doing deals, like Bruce Lee
Mhm.
and Daniel and his jokes, and Bruce Lee doing Belito Airbnb
Mhm.
deals, which is awesome.
Okay, so guys, everybody who's in PNB and Durban, Andrew will be joining you guys on Thursday, the 28th of September. Alternatively, if you are a professional member, you can join us for the mastermind, and that's going to be happening also on Thursday, on the 28th of September at 6 o'clock. The link is in the chat box, so you can get registered for that. I am going to be hosting the Women's Breakfast that's happening on the 23rd of September, this coming Saturday. It's going to be amazing. Again, the link is in the chat box, so I can't wait to see you there, ladies. And you are also going to be having the free event happening on Thursday, the 25th of September, here at our head office in Edenville.
And for people that can't make this Thursday, tomorrow night, we've actually got a virtual session as well with Leon Castleman talking about negative to positive cash flow property. So if you're not from Joburg and you can't make the Thursday night event, make sure you join us tomorrow night just for an hour talking about negative cash flow properties. What do you do with the negative cash flow property? Do you sell it, or what can you do? Can you change strategy? There's a lot of things we can do with a negative cash flow property to turn it into a positive cash flow property. So we'll get the team just to drop the link in the chat box for you as well. You can join from anywhere in the country because it is virtual, and that starts 6 for 6:30.
Okay, fantastic. And bring back to the comments, we have Raisibe. They're saying, I'm residing at Ekurhuleni currently, and I will be exiting from work end of February 2024. I have my own property in Crystal Park, Benoni. I'm thinking of taking advantage of the township investment. Well, this sounds like a perfect person to join us
Yes.
for the virtual event to turn negative cash flow properties into properties. Wow. Try saying that 5 times. Into positive cash flowing properties. So the extension of that, identifying which are available. Renovate or build reasonably and sell. Can this be viable move? So township properties is also something that we do cover. So Raisi wants to know which is more feasible. Building and then selling in it, or building and then renovating and then actually.
So it's a two thing here. There's taking the existing property and we just renovate the property and then we sell the property. Or can we develop? Can we build flats on that property? Can we sweat the asset? I think my first question is, why would you want to sell it in the first place? If we can show you how to build some flats or units on the property and make the property work for you, so you start getting a good income coming in. Look, I don't know the property, but my gut feeling is, why would we want to sell it? And this is a big topic for the 2-day workshop, Kelly.
Yes.
We actually have Mark Birmingham, we talk about developments, how do you build flats? We can get you finance for building flats at the back of your property or extending your current property, but you need to know what you're doing, right? Architects, civil engineers, make sure there's no servitudes, the cover ratio, all of that. So is there a better way in terms of holding or selling? I think, or what's the best way to do, Kali? There's no best way. There's no best thing. It depends on that person's current situation. If they're in a position where they've got lots of debt or they've got to raise capital, or you've got to sell property to get your hands on cash, then you do it. But it sounds to me like this could be a good cash flow king property.
Okay, so Raisibe, please just contact us at support@SA Property. The link will be in the chat box. And as Andrew mentioned, we are having a workshop this coming month end on the 30th and the 1st. It is a 2-day jam-packed workshop, similar to the one he did in Cape Town, where you leave and you are mentally exhausted because of the information that you've garnered. However, as I say goodbye, I want to say thank you so much, Andrew Walker, for joining us. And for those of you who have joined us, thank you so much. And as always, please see the links in the chat box. But from me to you, I will see you next week. Actually, not next week because it's a public holiday, but the week after that.